not a little amount of product.
Try and smoke 76 grams of concentrate at once.
Yeah, right, exactly. See what happens to you then.
It's going to a long coma.
Yeah, for real. Giddy up. Welcome back to Dr. BeeWell, the #1 health and cannabis podcast in the world. I'm your host, Steve Ivanovsky. We're thrilled to welcome Janelle LaPlante, a health and wellness professional and founder of the cannabis brand Tastefully Baked. With years of experience in both industries, Janelle is passionate about helping people achieve optimal health and wellness through natural and holistic approaches. Janelle's expertise includes nutrition, fitness, and mental health. She believes that living a healthy lifestyle is essential for overall well-being and is committed to sharing her knowledge and insights with others. In addition to her work in health and wellness, Janelle is the founder of Tastefully Baked, a cannabis brand that offers a range of products designed to promote relaxation and reduce stress, with a focus on using high-quality, natural ingredients that are sourced appropriately. Tastefully Baked has quickly become a trusted brand and a trusted name in the cannabis industry. So we're excited to have Janelle join us on Dr. BeeWell today to share her expertise on health and wellness, as well as her insights on the use of cannabis. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were we were talking in the pre-show just a lot about health and a lot about sugar and a lot of bullshit that's in food. And I know you have quite a few interesting stories. Before you Tastefully Baked became Tastefully Baked, but you were in school for health and wellness.
Yes, correct.
Okay, cool. So to take me back, tell me a little bit about Janelle LaPlante and health and wellness and where you're thinking in school and where just about that background a little bit.
Sure. It's been I'd say anything but linear. For most of my life, I actually wanted to be a corporate lawyer, and then I would say, after 2 years into a philosophy degree, I kind of decided that wasn't really my avenue anymore. So then I actually switched to accounting and did accounting for an entire year and realized that wasn't really my cup of tea either. And really at the end of the day, I was kind of denying myself my passion, which really is basically fitness, health focused. So then I switched over, went to health and wellness, and that's what I ended up getting my 4-year degree in 5 years in, became a personal trainer. Worked at a hospital for a while, so that was very, very insightful just as to how our healthcare system operates. And after a couple of years doing that, I just kind of decided I couldn't do it anymore because I just didn't agree with it, to say the least. And eventually, we ended up moving to Maine and starting a whole new cannabis endeavor that was a lot different than, obviously, as we talked before, my original cannabis endeavor in New Hampshire that ended very, very abruptly.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So Janelle has and this is, I've heard this story from other people. This is the first time that Janelle and I have actually met. But and I actually wanted to put this in the intro, but I didn't. But like people walk around talking like, OG, I'm an OG in cannabis, and it's like, well, no, Janelle actually is an OG. She is somebody who has, who is trying to, give herself and people around her medicine and trying to get it going, in a state where, unfortunately it wasn't legal and things got hairy and it was, bullshit. But I'm so excited to hear this story from you because I've heard of it, and like the fact that you doubled down and, still created your brand because you knew I just can't wait to hear it.
Sure. So we'll jump right into that. Really, kind of what started, I guess, just the overall of questioning things, which eventually led into cultivating cannabis. When I was in school, I had to read a book called Food Politics. And that book really opened my eyes to the corruption that occurs within the food industry and government and standards and what we're supposedly supposed to be eating. And at that time, I think the pyramid was like grains are all at the bottom, and then you had fruit and meat that were fighting for each other. And then I think vegetables were above that. So you want to consume even less vegetables than grains, and then obviously sugar and whatnot was at the top. But it just really went into details about how that system actually came to be. And then once you understand lobbying and it's a big mess. So then a couple of years later, had cannabis for the first time and was like, wow, so that's illegal, but alcohol is perfectly okay. Very, very interesting. So again, my brain's just kind of, racking and thinking about, how systems came to be. And it just never really seemed like it made much sense at the end of the day. I met my husband, and obviously at that time he was just my boyfriend. And we decided that we were going to cultivate cannabis together. He had already been doing it for maybe like a year beforehand, before we met. So that was interesting to kind of, I guess I would say, his way of showing me what he was doing as far as his investments in jobs when it first came about was
That was interesting, I bet.
It was, yeah.
But it's also, I think it's cool for someone like you, who is somebody who was already starting to, because this is when you were doing the personal training kind of, and you were at the hospital.
Actually, this was way even before that. Him and I met when I was 19. So I was still doing I was in college.
Okay.
At that point in time.
Okay, cool. So, but you were starting to already think about, this, because you'd already read Food and Politics.
Yep.
Is that Food and Politics?
Yep, Food Politics.
Food Politics.
Food
Okay,
Politics.
I'm going to read that one.
Food Politics by Marianne Nestle. It was probably written in like the late 90s, but it's definitely very good.
Was she a Nestle, like a Nestle?
No, actually not related at all whatsoever.
Okay, cool. Because sometimes like people in those families, they screw out, they
try to expose what their relatives are doing.
Mom and dad and brother and sister are fucking everybody up over here. So yeah, I'm trying to expose it.
I'm gonna go make some money off a book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I'm doing the good thing, but I'm just gonna make some money off those same people by writing a book.
Exactly.
Okay, so you were already starting to kind of think about tradition and how things are and operate in this country. It's kind of, maybe it's backwards, maybe it's just what we're being told or whatever.
Yep.
So that's cool that you were able to to see that for because I think that a lot of ladies that if I had gone up to and I told them that I wasn't growing cannabis at 19, but if I was, I think they would have said like, oh, you're just growing cannabis, you're just a drug guy, you're just that, especially back then. So I think it was really cool that you were able to see see the value in that, and to see that this kid obviously wasn't lying. He obviously had a passion for this, because he's now doing it 15 years later.
He's extremely passionate about it.
Yeah, like one of the most passionate guys in the state, from my understanding.
You guys. Lives, breathes, eats, read it. Like it's constantly absorbed by it. So yeah, I met him. He was living down in North Carolina at the time, but we're both from the same area back in New Hampshire. And after about 9 months, he moved back to New Hampshire because I was there. And we kind of started our own little endeavor together there. And after about, I think maybe 5 years there, I lose track of time, it all very abruptly came to an end. So when I was at the dentist one morning, I sent him a message telling him that I was coming home, but I had this really weird, it was bizarre. It was the most bizarre experience. So I was leaving the dentist, and all of a sudden I just felt unbelievably ill. Like my stomach just felt in a knot. I just felt super duper nauseous. I was like, I ate breakfast. Like, it wasn't that long ago. Like, why am I all of a sudden feeling absolutely terrible? So I sent him a message telling him that I was, on my way back home, and I didn't get any sort of response back. So I was like, okay, well, maybe he's busy in the garden or with the dogs or doing something. Again, didn't really think that much of it. And then as I was driving home, I was just starting to feel more and more sick. Like, I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm going to have to pull over on the side of the road and like call him and have him come and get me. I'm like, this is just really, really odd. But anyways, obviously I pulled through, and as I was driving up our road and about to kind of see our driveway, I see a bunch of cars kind of out in front of our road, all police cars. So at that point in time, I'm like, oh, okay. Like this is real, this is happening. And as I'm driving, I'm like, well, what do I do? Do I pull into my driveway? Do I keep driving? Do I turn around? Like, I don't know.
Right. I couldn't, I wouldn't,
It's just one of those things. So I just was like, well, whatever. I guess I'll go own the situation, or, just be me.
Yeah.
So I pulled up, and then there was a female police officer there at the time, and just, asked me if I am who I am, and I am who I am. Asked you a couple questions. If you live here, I didn't really give an answer as far as that one went. I just kind of left it as it was. they told me that I was under arrest and then put me in a police car and headed back to the local police station, which there I was interrogated for, I don't know, probably about 15 minutes, I want to say, just asking a variety, trying to get me to answer a variety of questions. But we had always told each other that if anything like this were to ever happen, then we don't talk.
We don't talk. It's getting out, right? Well, we have a lawyer. There's we're protected by our, First Amendment or whatever amendment that is. The Fourth Amendment. What amendment is it?
Fifth Amendment.
Fifth Amendment. Yeah, you guys know.
Fifth Amendment. Those things are very important.
They are really important. I should know. So yeah. So that's awesome that you guys, that you were, because that's how police officers play. And that's a game that they just love to do, especially when they're separating people and trying. I guess that's, in some cases, if something is doing criminal, maybe that's good. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's really shitty. It makes people feel horrible. And, it's not but whatever, especially when people are doing, fine things.
Yeah. So it was, then from there, went to jail, was there for, I think 5 days because I got there on a Thursday. And my biggest thing was they asked me if I wanted to call my mom. And I'm like, well, I don't really want to ruin her day. My day's already pretty ruined. She's at work right now. What, you know what I mean? I'll just have her, continue to have a good day, and I'll just keep going about whatever business this is going to be and see, kind of where it ends up and how it lands is really all I could do.
I probably would have not called my old man either. I probably would have waited 10 days.
Well, so eventually at that point in time, my public defender ended up being the person that called her, which probably made it worse, but
and ladies and gentlemen,
it is what it is.
And I think there's a cool story of this later that will come, comes full circle. We're going to talk about Janelle's mom a little bit and how she, because she didn't like cannabis at all, right? She
didn't really know anything about it. To her at that point in time, it was something that, way back in high school, all the lazy people, got together and smoked a bunch of weed and did a bunch of, lazy people things and were not productive members of society. And that was that. Which, I mean, if you are lazy, I can see how cannabis could make you lazier. But to people who aren't naturally that way, I think it really just enhances your overall personality and qualities and doesn't necessarily...
For people who are shot out of a gun in the morning and it's really hard for them to sit down and be lazy or whatever, those people, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's good even for people who are always, go, 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 go. And then you have, a little bit of cannabis and it more so can get you tapped a little bit more back into your parasympathetic nervous system than constantly just shooting adrenaline through your body because you're just go, 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 go.
Yeah,
go.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and that's why, I think that's why it helps me.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Could definitely see that. So yeah, I mean, it was an endeavor and a half. You learn a lot about how the legal system works. It was about for a year. I had
5 days in jail though. That's
5 days in jail.
Serious.
Well, it was more so just the time to because we had bail. So at first our bail was $50,000 cash for each of us, which was a lot more than even people who were in jail for various heroin crimes at the time. It was very interesting just to compare, our bail compared to what other people had for bail based upon the
harsher crimes
they did. Yep, but we were considered a danger to society. And so we had $50,000 cash bail, which eventually got reduced to $30,000 cash after a day. And then eventually I was out. My conditions of getting out was I had to have an ankle monitor on. So I had an ankle bracelet on for, I don't know, I want to say about 8 months before I could petition the court to get that taken off. I had a curfew, so obviously I needed to work, but I had to be home by 9 p.m. and I couldn't leave at one point until 8 a.m. in the morning, but then I had to petition them to make that earlier because I need to go to work, which starts way earlier than 8 a.m.
Just going through that though, ladies and gentlemen, anybody who's been through any type of, court legal stuff, they don't make this easy on you. To petition to the court to go in.
No.
It means you have to take days off of work to get into the court to do this, to go about this, and stuff like that's just hard. They make all that stuff hard.
It was a very stressful time for our family. Extremely stressful time for our family. I mean, we were looking at anywhere, I believe, from 5 to 10 years. So that's obviously prison time. And then at that point in time, we also, depending upon how that was going to go on the state level, if the state won, then the feds were going to come in because we, according to them, we had, dangerous firearms and we had cash, and then we had at that, illicit drugs. So it could have escalated a lot more than where it went, luckily, at the end of the day. So yeah, it was a year-long battle. It was basically a year-long to the actual day when finally all of the charges were essentially dropped against us. The state couldn't pursue it any further. Super grateful for the judge, really, who saw the case for what it was, and for our attorneys, obviously, for the fight, because it was definitely
a fight.
Yep,
That's a giddy up. I just that's, you guys had to go through all that strikes, and it's not you didn't just get off because you fucking went through, never mind the time, the money, all the,
it was very expensive.
Yeah, very expensive. But the toll on your health, your mental health, must have been insane.
It was very expensive, very stressful. Also, at that time we were engaged, but we weren't allowed to see each other. So we had they put a no contact order between the two of us. So that was another, you go from spending every single day with someone for, at that point, I think it was 5 years or so. And then all of a sudden, we were engaged. We had plans. We had wedding plans that we had to cancel. It was.
How long was this order you guys couldn't see each other for?
That ended that was 11 months. So it ended once the state realized that things weren't necessarily going their way, they kind of, we asked for that part of the whole conditions to be dropped.
Can I please see the person that I love and that I've been that's gonna make me cry? That's wild, man.
Yep. Plus we also had two dogs, so all the dogs were split up. So our family was very, very split up compared to how it once was. So yeah, it was 11 months, and we were able to kind of luckily our parents are great, so we moved in with my mom, and here we are with our 2 dogs, and that are very, very, furry and messy. And now, my soon-to-be husband's living here, and it was, it is what it was. We made the best of it.
Yeah, it's amazing because, like you said, you guys stuck together, and especially you and your husband like that.
Yep. Well, it's also very interesting too. You haven't seen. I can understand maybe people who go on deployment now. Obviously, it's an incredibly different situation, but it's different when you haven't seen the person that you love for so long, and now you're coming back together, and you're like, okay, well, how do we
exist?
Right. Because obviously everything's very different than
how do we exist in my mom's basement?
Yep. Than when we, left our life 11 months ago.
Oh my God.
And everything that we've gone through up until then.
Right. And so now you guys weren't able to do any sneaksies or anything and see each other because it was so much on the line.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Basically, if we violated any of our bail conditions, then they would get the $30,000, and I'm pretty sure we would have to go back to jail until the whole case was actually, either ended or decided.
That's part of the racket, right? Let's make it as hard as possible on these people. Let's separate them. Let's separate them from their loved ones for a year. For what? So you guys can talk, and you can talk about how you what?
Yeah, they didn't want us to co-conspire with some sort of various plan. They even had various supposedly phones tapped of our family members so they could listen to various conversations.
They just thought you guys were running now. Was it a huge operation you guys were running? You were running out of a house.
It was tiny. in comparison to what I'm used to and see in business today, it was
30,000 square feet.
It was 4,000 watts. So four lights.
4 lights.
4 lights. And probably a 8x16 grow tent at the time, all water cooled, aeroponics.
It wasn't even a room, just a tent.
It was a tent in a garage. So we had a veg tent that was probably an 8x10, if I remember correctly, and then we had our flower tent that was an 8x16.
How many cars were at your house when you showed up?
Oh gosh,
50?
You had the New Hampshire Drug Task Force there, so that was a bunch of vehicles, and then you also had the local, at that point, the Guilford Police Department and all those cruisers. They were there. The whole place was just crawling with people. They destroyed quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah.
In the process.
Yeah, you probably lost money through that too, right? Did they take stuff from you guys that they didn't give back?
That was interesting. That was very interesting. So they took obviously all of our electronics. They took all of our guns. They took all of our ammunition. They took any cash that was there. There wasn't, I don't even think there was that much cannabis there at the time. I honestly can't remember because it was, we're going into 10 years ago now. So they took any sort of that stuff. And then, so our case finally ended in October of 2014. And so, we were like, sweet, maybe we can, well, they took our car. That was another thing that they just ended up taking because we didn't fight for it back. And then you would deal with IRS issues, and that's not worth the mess.
They just
just take the car. That's fine.
Like $20,000, $30,000 car?
Yeah, it was like we got a brand new like WRX.
Nice.
And that we had like 2,000 miles on per se. And
nice.
Just take it. Whatever.
Just take it, guys. Here you go.
Yep. So I wanted
for the grow tent.
Exactly. So yeah, our case ended in October of 2014. And then a couple months went by and we still didn't have, all of our other stuff back, all of our electronics and things like that I just mentioned. And so we're like, okay, well, when are we going to actually get all that stuff back? So at that point, Corey's attorney had to do some whatever paperwork to the state and just let them know, like you're technically harboring items that you're not allowed to have because they belong to us. So in order to get that back, we went to a parking garage in Concord in the middle of the week. And there was this like town and country minivan. I felt like I was in a movie. So I'm pulling into a parking garage, parking next to a town and country minivan. These two men in these trench coats get out, open the back of the vehicle up, and then just start handing us like all of our guns, all of our ammo, and like all of our electronics. And we're just like, literally like they gave us like handfuls of bullets. Like that's how they gave it back to us. So, we're like, well, okay, so I have this handful of bullets. I'm going to go put it in my cup holder, I guess. Like, I don't know what to do
with the handful of bullets
with any of this stuff. And I think there was like a pizza guy that was delivering to somebody at that point in time too. So he was just like watching he's like, what is going on here where these people are, exchanging guns in a parking garage. So that was a bizarre experience. That just felt completely like I was just in a different place at that point in time. But that was the final like, okay, now it's all done and we've got all of our stuff back and we're back together and gonna go continue, our life and pick it back up wherever that may be.
The ultimate giddy up. I think that. Well, I know it would become the ultimate giddy up, but right then it was still challenging because you guys
it was super challenging.
You had to pick up your life. Like,
you have to pick up your life. You just lost, hundreds of thousands of dollars more so than what you actually had to pay. We obviously have to pay our family back for all the money that they spent in order to keep us free, not to mention all of the money that was taken that we didn't ask for back. And
the time that you weren't able to you were working during the time, but your
life's on pause.
Your life's on pause because you got to go to the court and petition this and you got to go do this and do that. And it's,
you don't know if you're going to end up going to jail for 10 years. So everything's just like, it's just a temporary state. I'm just trying to get through the day.
Just trying to survive.
Really, at that point. But the biggest thing that helped me through that really was fitness. Like that's the only thing really that
fell back on the degree and the learning of what you had learned there. Or?
More so just doing it. Like at that point for my own mental health. If I did not work out every day, like I was a complete disaster. It was the only thing where I could actually have my mind off of the fact that my whole entire life was a complete shit show.
Yeah. And I think that's like we talked about it, we talk about it all the time on the show. Like that's what working out and it allows you to be present. It's a form of meditation and it gets you out of this crazy reality that we all exist in.
That was the only thing I could control at that time.
Yeah, and it was the only thing you can control.
The only thing. Like
that's all we can control is our breath. If we can control our breath, and that's, when you boil it all down, like that's, if you want to get really good at working out, learn how to control your breath. Or that's just my opinion. That you're.
Breath work is extremely important.
Okay, giddy up. Okay, cool.
Breath work is very important. But yeah, just the only thing I could control was actually being able to, work out what I eat, sleeping relatively, how much water I can drink, and physically moving.
Yeah, I would say the sleep thing would probably be is hard to control.
That was hard, and that's harder in that situation. Because I actually had to sleep with my ankle bracelet plugged into the wall because it was the only time I had to charge it.
You had to sleep with
I had to sleep with my ankle bracelet plugged into the wall because obviously I would work for, 8 to 12 hours a day and you can't really plug your ankle bracelet in when you're working. It doesn't,
What were you doing for work?
At that point, I worked at a local restaurant and I also worked at GNC.
Okay, giddy up.
Yeah.
So okay, because I just thought that I was picturing you personal training with a
Oh, gosh.
with this ankle bracelet on. Like there's Janelle.
I had a couple, side jobs as far as that went, obviously still, but for court purposes and things that you need to present with them as far as jobs go. Look, being a self-employed person doesn't really look very
No, it doesn't.
good.
It doesn't look good at all.
No.
Until you go screw.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's the ultimate giddy up that you guys, are going through this and able to stay together. And, it seems like now we're at we're climbing. Things are really, really bad.
Yep.
But they're starting to get better because the cases.
Yeah, you're not going.
You're not going to jail for 10
years. You're not going
years.
to prison. So it's wonderful.
That's wonderful.
It's a pretty relieving feeling to know that you're not going to be going to prison.
Yeah. And that it's so tough because it's like you probably, were you ever thinking like, oh, this is like I did something wrong? Or were you just steadfast and like, this is bullshit. The system is wrong. And or did it have feelings that, push back? Because I know myself, I would have been, late at night, I would have been like, oh my God, this is my fault. Weed is bad. Well, I would have believed what they were telling me.
No, I never thought cannabis. I guess really at the end of the day, what I felt the most bad about was everything we put our family through.
The stress. Yeah.
That was really a lot. As far as what we were doing, it's not wrong in my mind or in my realm. Yeah. Like I just don't. I don't find that. But yeah, just the stress of the family.
Yeah.
Was a lot.
Yeah, and in my realm too, it's not wrong at all. You guys were, like growing weed and growing cannabis in a tent. It's not even like you had a full, you just, man, like, and the bale.
It's a 60-cider arrow table.
Yeah, unbelievable.
I mean, the plants are probably, I don't know, got maybe like 2 feet tall in that aspect.
Yeah, so now it must be crazy now to see, like, now that you tell us the story of where we went from there. You guys doubled down. You said, "Hey, sure, this is life, but we actually know that this is the case." And Maine just giddied up.
Yeah, it was more so one of those things. After all of that ordeal happens, and then to try and tell people, "Hey, I want to go right back into what I was doing," that was really an internal conflict, I would say, for the both of us. My husband definitely felt a lot of pressure to adopt what society would, I guess, consider a normal life. Years and years before that, he used to do a lot of welding. He used to work as a welder, went to school for welding. So that's kind of where he was being pushed to go back into. And it's not in his heart and soul. Like to do it as a fun side project, sure, why not? But like to do it for my living, that's not, it wasn't his thing. So there was a lot of
the dude wants to grow cannabis and wants to be around cannabis.
Yeah, there's a lot of internal struggle there, but without a doubt. And after, probably I want to say 6-7 months of just this back and forth of what do we do from here? Where do we go? We just decided to go back to doing what we enjoy doing, just in a different place where they allow us to go do what we enjoy doing.
It's so fucking cool that that Maine, the state next to where you grew up and where this all happened, was going that way.
Well, it was just interesting, even while we were, growing back in New Hampshire, when we would go and get nutrients at various stores and whatnot, things were a lot more coded back then, but overall, people were like, well, why don't you guys just move to Maine? Because, the imaginary line, like what you're doing over in New Hampshire isn't technically allowed over there. But if you were to move here, you'd be perfectly fine. And, at that point in time, we didn't really think much of it.
Right.
All of our families there, we were just doing what we were doing there. In hindsight, obviously, it would have been way smarter to move to Maine sooner than having to deal with all of that.
Maybe not.
But it is what it is.
Maybe not. And I don't know. I'm not you. I'm not Corey. But like the story that I'm hearing is like two people who love each other so much and who love to do something that have so passionate about something. They were tested and then they doubled down. Like would Tastefully Baked be as big as it is now, and as respective a brand as it is now if that stuff never happened? Of course, like you said, you never want to go through the hardship. And like I said, I've gone through hardship. And when people say to me, oh, like, that you're the person you are today, Steve, because you've gone through those, the hardship. And I've had my fair share with the law and all that bullshit, So it's but a lot of times I tell them like, fuck off. Like, that's not what molded me. Like,
Right.
that's not, but when I'm actually thinking in my bed, it's like, well, no, I wouldn't be this person. I wouldn't be with the person that I'm with now.
You wouldn't have all those lessons.
Right.
That was a year of a lot of lessons just as far as how, the legal system works when you get in trouble and all these processes that you go through and indictments and all these various court hearings that you need to go through. And I mean, even when I was in jail for the few days that I was in jail and talking to the other, inmates and kind of trying to understand like their background and where they came from and why they're here and how long they've been here for. It was really sad at the end of the day. It was very sad.
Yeah. And that's the thing that is maybe sad about it is that like I was lucky enough to have people when I got in trouble with the law. I was lucky enough to have family that I could fall back on and did have some money to get, good attorneys. And
that's the other thing you realize is basically if your family doesn't have any money or, any resources just in general, you're going to sit there.
Yeah, you're going to sit there.
That's what it's designed for.
It's literally what it's designed for. And I don't have, my family didn't have, resources or doesn't have resources but if someone in my family got in trouble or whatever, most families can make something happen. They can find 10 grand, they can find 20 grand, but not like a lot of families. That's never a possibility.
It's not. And a lot of things too, what I saw was just very generational. Their dad was in jail for X, Y, and Z. So now they're in jail for X, Y, and Z. So it was just sad.
Yeah, it's sad, and it comes back to like education and like trying to educate people about that shit's happening. That people are staying in jail generationally for the same stuff, and also like, hey, like the whole attorney and legal system, like if you have money, you can do whatever you want. Like that's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, throughout a lot of it, at least before I actually hired an attorney, the public defender was just pretty much like I was being pushed
to accept a deal.
To either accept a deal or to talk. They were like, they really, really want to talk to you. They really, really want to talk to you. And I'm like,
sell Corey out.
I'm sure they do really, really want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to them. And they're just like, well, this is not looking good for you. And the thing for me down in my gut the whole entire time, even when I was, laying in jail, I'm just like, this whole thing does not add up. Like it just didn't make any sense. No one actually, there was maybe 2 people in the whole world that knew what we were doing. So I'm like, there's a lot of really stuff to undercover here that's very, very fishy. So in order to get to all of a sudden being in jail, awaiting trials and all this stuff for growing cannabis, I'm like, there had to have been a lot more to the story that happened that we don't necessarily know about right now. And that was basically what was behind it all.
And that stuff all came out later. And that's why you guys were able to, it got dismissed and you guys didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, it was a process. It was actually funny enough. My hairdresser at the time had some lady come sit in his chair, and basically told him the entire story of walking into our garage with our landlord. Whoa. So that was kind of like the tip off of everything. And then I'm like, okay, so now it's starting to make, a little bit more sense as to how we got to.
The landlord saw the stuff.
Yes. So what ended up happening was, our landlord went in there with a real estate agent because I think she was going to have the house, assessed or reappraised or whatever the deal was. And then obviously saw what we were doing there. And then ended up at that point in time, there was someone who worked for the New Hampshire Drug Task Force Liquor Division right around the street from us, right around the corner. So she went to him and kind of let him know, what she saw and, what should I do? And from my understanding is he made it seem to her like she could lose her house over this if she doesn't cooperate.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of what led to that. And her ex-husband actually lived right down the street from us as well. And was like, they pay their rent. The place looks great. I think I was 23 at the time. He's like, they're young kids, could ruin their whole future. Just let it go.
Yeah.
But obviously the drug task force agent had a little bit more influence and the potential of losing your house. I mean, I get it. No one wants to lose their house over something like that. Do I think that would have actually happened? No, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Sounds like the drug enforcement agent was
exactly. There's a lot to prove there from his angle as far as knowing what's going on at that house, especially considering the location that it was in and the neighborhood and whatnot. It was kind of a big deal, I guess. So then what happened was she had to actually come back into the house legally. So then they contacted the real estate agent that ended up, that we did the lease and whatnot with, and said that the owner wanted to come back and do a walkthrough of the house because of the appraisal and whatnot. So, my husband and I tried to make the house look wonderful and spent forever cleaning it up and all that sort of stuff and rearranging to make everything, in the garage not be noticeable as far as what it was. And she came in, did her little walkthrough. It was very odd. We both had a very strange feeling about it when it was happening. And literally, it was 4 days after that was when the house was raided.
Wow. And so she didn't even say anything about it,
Oh, no. It was just strange. I mean, who looks in a closet underneath some stairs?
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing there, but when she went through the first time, I think we had nutrients there. And so then when you're hearing when all of the discovery comes out and you realize certain things don't match up to when the true time is that she actually came into the house compared to the time when she came into the house before when we didn't know she came into the house, you're that doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up to the actual time in which we know she came into the house, which then further confirmed that she came into the house before. Right. And was trying to make it all seem like one visit instead of actually being 2 separate visits.
Right. So, and that's, what sucks is that it took so much money, so much time, so much, mental, strength from you guys to get to that point. Most people don't survive that. They get worried under the bait. The DEA agent, the cop, is telling them that, this or that, we want to talk to you, all this stuff, and eventually the weight of that crushes people and they're not able to, to move forward with it.
Yeah, it's a lot, but I definitely encourage people to fight that sort of thing.
No, fight it. Fight
it.
You
have to.
Yeah, you have to because that's it, baby. We have rights.
Yep.
We have rights as human beings, and they're going to try to crush your life, and it is going to be hard.
And it's going to cost you money, unfortunately. That's part of the reality of it. Right. That's basically what it realized. We had to fly her out. She was living in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We had to fly her from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, all the way to New Hampshire to have a deposition, have her, pay for her to stay someplace, pay for a rental car.
This was the
landlord.
Oh my Lord. That's what you were responsible to pay for all that stuff.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. Unless you have some sort of resources of money to be able to make this all happen, to actually expose the truth, you are going, the state's going to win.
The state's going to win. So to get her to expose the truth, you had to get her to fly out from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Wow. See that, ladies and gentlemen? That's how challenging it is to, then the state was just going to say, oh no, that's it was one visit. It was one visit and we're good to go. So you have rights. Be like Janelle, be like Corey, and, really have the fortitude to be strengthened. And if you don't have the resources, we don't have the resources yet at Dr. BeeWell, but that is something that we've always talked about, and we're going to, lobby for that stuff like crazy. And eventually, hopefully we'll have some money that will be able to help people.
Hopefully people won't be going to jail for cannabis.
Hopefully not, right? But hopefully not. But there's always going to be something.
Yep.
And we always want to be ahead of it and always helping. And there's, we're big into psilocybin and that, we'll get into that later and stuff. But that is something that maybe that people need to be protected by as well. And hopefully it can all just get decriminalized and it can become legal. And we can, as a nation, people don't get in trouble and we let everyone out of jail who's, serving time for cannabis.
We have the highest incarceration rate out of any country. So, goes to show you that it's more of a business.
Exactly. It's a business. And everything that we've talked about today is a business. But that's, I do want to talk about your business a little bit. I want to talk about how you guys took the next steps and how you moved out to Portland. Is that where you go?
It was a rough transition to say, like anything, it was definitely a super rough transition. We commuted kind of to Maine for a while from New Hampshire because it takes a while to, find another place to live. And at that point in time, I was still working at the hospital. And there's obviously, during transition can be messy. You can have deals with certain people and they relatively fall through. But eventually, we kind of went back to our roots, just him and I. We settled up in Portland. We ended up getting, our own facility, broke ties with everybody else. It just, needed kind of our own space, our own way, go back to how we've always done things. We just work better together.
5 years.
Yeah, we just work better together and not having anybody else involved. So yeah, that's basically where it started up again. So we got our facility in Portland and had to go through. We were actually the first company to ever approach the city of Portland about setting up a C1D1 high hazard extraction room. So that was a learning lesson, I would say, for everybody involved. Very long lesson, but it was good. So we got ourselves basically up and running, back to doing what we love to do, just in a little bit of a different form at the end of the day. So now we do cultivation, we do extraction, and we also, formulate edibles and other various end products.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, the thing that I love most about you guys is, your chocolate. I think that it tastes really awesome. And we're about like healthy edibles, and that's what Dr. BeeWell is all about, and trying to get the bullshit out of the edibles. Yep. And so like you guys, I know that even though chocolate is, sugar, and that's fine, that's a giddy up, so is honey. I think that's cool that you guys are kind of doing the same thing. Sourcing. I see you always talking about like how you're sourcing your products,
yes.
Where you're sourcing your ingredients.
So basically, I mean, in our own personal lives, just the type of food that we eat matters a lot to us. So basically, just in our own personal lives, all of our meat is sourced from a local farm. And so I'm very picky as far as that goes. And that kind of transcends as well into our business model. So basically, all the cacao that we use for our chocolate, it's either cultivated by companies that don't use child slave labor, or just in general slave labor, meaning the wage is not really sustainable for
a human being.
Yeah, basically. It's sad though, just in general. I mean, still in the United States, farming is not a very lucrative endeavor, but farming is what our life form is based upon. If we didn't have farming, there's no farms, there's no food, there's no humanity at all.
Steve's not able to do his podcast.
No, Steve will be very, very hungry. Either that, or he's going to have to go learn how to farm and not have enough time for podcasting.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, it's not the most lucrative thing at all in the world. And there's just, there's a lot of dirty to the cacao industry. Because a lot of it happens in third world countries and there's not a lot of oversight. So definitely I try to either support small, actual individual cacao farmers in various, warm climate areas throughout the world, or I source only from companies that do not, use farms where there's child slave labor, because it's huge. And you're talking about children as young as like 5 years old that are carrying around machetes and going to chop cacao down from the tree. They don't get fed much. They don't see their families for years. And I mean, that's because their families are obviously also very impoverished. So it's just a survival mechanism for them, which is just really sad. But at the same time, I can't.
Maybe we should stop eating as much chocolate.
I don't know.
Or is that not the answer?
I don't think that's the answer.
I don't think so either.
I think it's more so just supporting people who have actual
good practices like what you're doing.
Ethics.
Yeah,
ethics at the end of the day. Goes
it's
a long
hard
way.
because like the big companies, they don't give a shit.
No, not at all. I mean, it's all about profit.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Profit over people.
Yep. So, I mean, obviously, the stuff that we source is more expensive. There's smaller profit margins on our end, but morally, I can't really support anything else. So between supporting them, there's also just any sort of small local farmers that have ingredients that are in various things that I'm making. We support them. A lot of dairy. Maine has actually a very extensive kind of dairy network. So I use all local Maine dairy. The honey that we use, again, sourced from a local apiary that's probably like 3 miles away from the shop. So that's just, I don't know, it's just really cool to support the community and small farmers in various ways. And that's just always been really important to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's like when I was going around and I was starting this brand and stuff, it's like, you take notice of the other brands that are doing it right. And like you guys having a honey product on there immediately made me like, okay, giddy up. I gotta see what these guys are all about. And like, cause like most people aren't sourcing it from their local farmer who's 3 miles away.
Which is awesome because whenever I go and visit them, I learn so much.
Hell yeah.
Like I had no idea that there's all these different seasons of honey.
Oh yeah.
And like they all taste vastly different.
Yep.
Depending upon whatever the bees were pollinating on at that, particular point in time. So it's been definitely like I get a lot of education out of it.
Yeah. And that's what's beautiful about running a business like this is that education is like I'm constantly learning. That's why I do the show, so that I can keep learning and I can keep educating myself, so that hopefully I can share that. It's mostly about me. I just want to educate myself.
Right.
And like hopefully the conversations that I have people can educate themselves as well.
Yep. It has a lot to do, obviously, with just continued personal growth, but also trying to, help other people grow as well. and understand, the interconnectings of how everything actually works in this world. And it's not very compartmentalized, even though society tries to portray it as such.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, another story that I have like about you that, that connects us that, I had like no idea, I just had seen your cool brand out there and saw, had respected that. And then saw, I have a friend who I went to school with, a young lady, and named Audrey. And she, I knew that she had lived in Maine and that she, I had moved to Maine. So, we were friends in school. So I just had reached out and said hi. And she has a young daughter and I just had a son. So, there's a vibe there.
Yep.
And so, Audrey is just an amazing person with amazing strength. And
she's a badass. She is great to have on the team.
Yeah, she's badass. And so, she went through some really, really, challenging things with, and I don't want to tell, Audrey's story. I hope to have Audrey come on the show and have her tell her own story. But she was going, society was telling her one thing, and Audrey was saying, no, this is what I think is good for me and my family.
Yep.
Just like what Janelle and Corey thought was, this is what's good for me and my family. This is what we're going to be doing when you guys were doing it in New Hampshire, because you knew that it was good for you then, regardless of what the law said. And then when you moved to Maine, you still knew, or you doubled down. You knew that it was good for you guys, and you went back to it. And just like that strength. So when I found out that you were, that Audrey had come to start working for you on weekends, and that had helped her facilitate, her not to have to deal with what she wanted to, her to deal head on deal with what she had to deal with.
Yep.
You made that easier for her. You made that transition. And she let that, she's posting all, kind of about all you guys, and, you guys are making edibles together now. And like, now she's like, her story shown through. We're starting to see that, Audrey was probably, Audrey definitely was 100% validated in how she felt and how she was trying to protect her family. And that's a giddy up. And I just wanted to hear it from your end, because it was such a cool story to see.
Yeah. I think you have to really be like open-minded and of everybody and kind of where they come from and their own story and everything that they have learned from their own experiences. So we all have our own experiences, and that's why we believe whatever, we happen to believe. And so she was going through a challenging time, and we also really needed an extra set of hands. So it's, we've kind of known each other or met more so actually back in the day through the fitness community. The fitness community is it's a great community.
It's so great. And I should say that because that's how Audrey was kind of, again, she's a badass.
Yep.
So like I was starting to do yoga and starting to like, thinking about weightlifting again, and like thinking like, oh, but I'm this like yoga person now. And like, okay, but I want to weightlift. And then I'd see Audrey and she'd be like throwing up plates and doing all this crazy stuff and doing like competitions and stuff. And I was like, damn, look at her go.
Yep. So we actually, met through the fitness community years ago. And then just, timing and fate and what have it kind of all lined up. And she decided that she wanted to kind of hop on board, really agreed, with our mission and what we're trying to do in the cannabis field, and started working for us on weekends at that point in time. And now she works for us full time, and it just jives really well. We both have... we definitely have similar beliefs and philosophies, but I think overall as a business, you have to be open to various people's philosophies, and kind of having it really creates a well-rounded community at the end of the day. And for us to be able to provide a place, I guess, of employment, it is what it is. But I think it's obviously more than a place of employment, but to be able to provide that for people where they feel comfortable to express their opinions is extremely fulfilling. Like I don't know if there's really a more fulfilling aspect of mine and Corey's life. We talk about it quite a bit in that post that you were talking about, that you were referencing. Like, after he read that, he's like, that's what this is all about, really, at the end of the day. Like, it's, yeah, weed's cool, weed's fun. I love, obviously I love it. I wouldn't continue to pursue it after all the bullshit that we've gone through, but really just providing a great place for people to be able to go to work, feel comfortable, and creating a community, even, with our own brand and with our own culture and the various people that we do, collaborations with. And like I said before, all the other farmers that we can support, like that's really what it's all about, is supporting your neighbor at the end of the day. I mean, we're all the same. If you really go out and talk to your neighbor down the street, you're not like, it's going to be very different than what you hear on the news. Like, we're going to like each other a lot more than they make it out to seem like we hate each other on the news.
It's so true. And like everything that you're saying is so cool. Like the show is about helping individuals, the community and society as a whole be well. And like, that's literally what you guys are doing, through all the different, mechanisms. And it does feel really good. Right. And at the same time, it feels really good because you said you provide this for the community and the community provides back for you.
Right.
You threw it out there in the universe because you need, you needed someone to come and help your team. And then you've got this awesome person who comes and brings so much more to it. And like you hit on a great point by being open to different philosophies, and that's how we learn. That's how we get to an end point where the end point is always growing, and it can always be changing, but we're not in disagreement with each other, because we all, at the end of the day, we are all the same.
Yeah, and in order to actually receive all these warm, fuzzy energy feelings from everything, like you have to give. Like it all starts with giving, and whatever you give, the world more or less in some fashion is going to reciprocate it back to you. It might not be what you had in mind, but it all comes back around.
Yeah, karma is definitely real. What you put out into the universe definitely comes back to you.
Yep, and I mean, the longer you live, the more you see it.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily something I would have believed when I was 12, but
right. The more it takes patience, and it shows itself in different ways. You don't know it. You don't always. You don't know, like, this person's going to show up at my door, and then this is going to be exactly what I need in my life. But it's 6 months ago, it's exactly what you were asking for in a different way.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you have to be patient and wait for whenever that door opportunity opens, then seize it.
Exactly. It might be 6 years.
Right. It could be. I wouldn't necessarily, rush it and try and fit a square peg in a circle. It's just not going to work. But
Audrey and you guys met in fitness, and I want to talk a little bit more about your fitness journey, because as well as like the sourcing of food, because it seems like you have a personal story behind that, like why you, again, it's so cool, Janelle, that you take you take things from your life and stuff that you've been able to get strength from, and then push that forward and actually use it in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know earlier we were talking about you had some trouble with food, and that's food politics kind of led you into certain things, but you were actually experiencing some like physical symptoms from some foods that people normally wouldn't expect that you would get reactions from.
Yeah, it was odd. It started when I was young, like right after I got my wisdom teeth taken out. I started to get some allergies, and then which progressed into, I guess it's called like a perioral dermatitis from various fruits, I thought at the time. So like apples, strawberries, bananas. My lips would swell. They'd get like an eczema type reaction, crack and bleed. And it would just keep getting exacerbated more and more. I ate certain things to the point where I could barely like open my mouth to put food in without significant pain. So obviously I went to my primary care doctor as my first step. Was given an antibiotic kind of medication to rub on my lips because she could have sworn that I had herpes. And I'm like, I don't think that's it, but okay, I will give it a shot because this is terrible to deal with.
Right, a virus, herpes, the virus. Let's take an antibiotic. Like,
yes,
sounds like some primary care.
No, yeah, it didn't make any sense. But again, too, at that point in time, I was 19. What do I really?
Well, we trust our doctors, right?
Right. What do I really know at that point about the whole system? Really, not that very much. So I did that for a week, and it didn't work, just like I figured it wasn't going to, because it happens when I eat certain things. So then from there, I went and saw an allergy specialist, and I was too sensitive for a prick test. So then I had a bunch of blood drawn and matched up against all these things that I thought I was allergic to. And then supposedly I'm also allergic to, or sensitive to, a couple other things that I didn't name on the list that I didn't really have a reaction to, but okay. And then from there, I was told to go to a dermatologist to try and address the issue. She told me that it's becoming more prevalent because of our food industry, but didn't really have a solution. And then I was given like a hydrocortisone cream to put on my face forever.
like literally hydrocortisone forever.
Yep, go put that on your skin and gradually, wear away the layers.
Well, that's the thing. Steroids are great for treating symptoms, and they're great until they're not anymore.
Exactly.
And then they're fucking brutal on the body.
Yep. So go rub this steroid on your face forever.
Right.
So that was the solution. And after a couple of tubes of that, I'm just like, there's got to be I didn't always have this.
Right. I shouldn't just have to keep rubbing this hydrocortisone. Like hydrocortisone is not like chapstick, ladies and gentlemen. It's like a thick, you can get ointments of it, but you can
get a lesser strength, technically over the counter, but mine was stronger and had to be a prescription strength.
Right.
So after a couple of years of dealing with that, I'm like, okay, there's got to be some reason, some root cause for all of this to be happening. And then at that point in time, 6-7 years later, there was a lot more information with good old Google as far as other people having similar issues. So I just kind of started diving down that rabbit hole, ended up seeing a naturopathic physician, which again, it's still not, you're not going to just be given the cure by any means. You're going to have to take various tests. You're going to have to do trial and error of, various supplements or taking certain things out of your diet and the whole spiel. So I did that for a while and definitely saw, I would say, some improvement overall. But again, I'm really a big advocate for people kind of being their own best doctor. They know their symptoms. They know their reactions. They know what happens when they do X, Y, and Z better than the doctor because the doctor's not in your body. So I just started to do, again, more personal research. And as alternative medicine and more naturopathic modalities have come a long way in the past 15 years. That has been really, really cool to see evolve.
Hell yeah.
Because when I was searching for answers for this 15 years ago, there was nothing. I was just an anomaly and nobody else had any sort of conditions whatsoever. Supposedly, even though I really think we've been suffering from all of this for a very long time.
Whenever they started fucking with our food.
That was a very long time ago.
Okay, yeah, I gotta leave food politics.
I mean, even if you were just go back to TV dinner age when they were pushing that, which that started in the 50s, and that's all garbage.
Right.
So it's basically around the Industrial Revolution and when they started commercializing the food industry, when all went to crap and everything sprayed with pesticides and glyphosate, and that's a whole big rabbit hole. But anyway,
another show.
Yeah, pretty much. We could talk about that for hours. So yeah, I just started to do more research about food and food's impact on the body and inflammation and, your lymphatic system and stress and your parasympathetic system and just really trying to pull all the pieces together personally and being my own best doctor and advocate. For me personally, with every body is different. So I think once you kind of understand that, you can realize that a doctor isn't going to necessarily, there's not one size fits all solution. You got a different toxic load than I have. My liver functions differently than your liver and kidneys function based upon everything that you've consumed. Even how you were born is going to actually impact that.
Right. Maybe even the most.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's certain bacteria is great to have. Others, it has an impact. So I've kind of relatively figured out what works for me as far as various dietary changes. But again, that's not going to be for everybody. But for me specifically, the second I removed gluten, dairy, and eggs from my diet, I had a boatload less inflammation. Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that.
Imagine if, but those things were not easy for me to change.
Oh, yeah, I very, very challenging.
I was a person who probably ate eggs every single day for 10 years for breakfast.
Oh,
Never once, you know what I mean? No one ever suggested it to me that maybe I should take this out of my diet. And I never realized, how I would feel not consuming that because I consumed it every day.
Right.
So the first couple of days that I took those things out of, my diet, I'm like, wow, I feel a lot better. My stomach feels a lot lighter. And I'm not having inflammation like crazy. I could eat an apple, which I supposedly thought was the actual issue, and not have inflammation all over my face. So I'm like, all these years I've been avoiding all these delicious fruits, when in reality, it was something completely different.
Wow. So you were actually able to go back to the fruits and now you can eat fruit fine. And it was the other stuff, causing the reaction, causing you're, having a negative. Now, were you just having the on your lips and the cracking and everything? Or did you have gut symptoms as well? I know a lot of people with food have a lot
there was definitely intestinal distress, supposedly. I take diagnoses with a grain of salt. I don't really like to label things per se because I don't know. I think people can get really absorbed into what things are labeled as a little bit too much, and it kind of gets wrapped up in their identity.
Yes.
More or less. But yeah, supposedly I had like SIBO and histamine intolerance and, kind of like borderline mast cell activation syndrome, and which that wasn't really a terminology either way back when I first started having all of the issues. So I'd say that's kind of how I would sum it up, and just through, trying to manage food and stress and breath work, like
Yeah, the stress I think is huge on it.
it's massive. I mean, there was a book that I also had to read, which I wonder if colleges would still have their students read these books that I read way back when, because it just seems kind of counterintuitive to the direction of today's society. But I also had to read Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, which was a whole book about the impacts of stress on the body and like a domino effect of it all, which is very, very fascinating.
Cool. Now, I know that, not about zebras, but for instance, you have like an elephant. So an elephant has one stomach compared to like a giraffe, which has four stomachs. And so they eat some, like similar to the same thing, vegetation. Now the giraffe has to go through four stomachs for it to get processed. And now the elephant can, this thing's eating trees and all this stuff, and it's just in its one stomach, and it just gets processed. And it's like, it's just some of the goodness in that, I want some elephant gut bacteria.
Right.
Right.
I mean, yeah, gut back. I mean, we are walking bacteria. Like when you really start to learn the fundamentals of what you're made out of and your biology, like that's what we're. There's just bacteria and some strange human experience could be considered an illusion, could not be. It really, it depends how deep you want to go.
Who actually knows? But we're really just a bunch of bacteria walking around.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Now, so have you started to like these modalities that you've learned through yourself? You've started to take these and kind of shape them into a new passion, and starting to help other people with this now too, right? You're like starting to coach people, or
more so what I'm trying to do. So really my whole life, as I mentioned before, I used to be a personal trainer and while I was doing cannabis, and then switched back to cannabis. So cannabis and fitness and helping people be healthy have like always competed for competition for me as far as what I should go do, what I should go execute.
You told me on the phone, it vie for your attention.
Yes.
I thought that was fucking cool.
Yeah, they do. They it's just constantly back and forth. Like my world is basically fitness and cannabis, and everything else I don't really pay too much attention to. So now that, we have our business, it's definitely not running on its own or anything like that. But I just felt like a piece of me expression, into the universe was kind of missing if it's only just cannabis. And that's basically, been my focus for the past 6 years, because it takes a lot of work to run a business. So now that I wouldn't necessarily say I have more time. I just felt like I was really, really missing expressing something into this world. So now I've kind of started to go back into, dabble a little bit into fitness and helping people just work out. I just want people to move. Like,
gotta move.
You have to move. Like the benefits of moving are just so monumental that I just want people to move. And especially, if you pay attention to what's going on in the world, we're in a pretty dark time. We're not in this, everything's wonderful. So I really find that movement, when you feel like everything else in the world, as I mentioned before, is completely out of control. It's what I resourced to back when we were going, through our case, like control what you can control. And one of those things that you can control is actually movement. It's going to release endorphins. You're going to feel better. You're going to feel more clear. You're not going to feel as depressed. So if I can help people just move more, and the benefits that they're going to get from that, like that's something that's been missing for me for the past 6 years.
Yeah, and I think that's a giddy up if you can help them do that, because movement we need it. We need it so bad. And
we're designed to. We're not designed to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours a day.
We've been walking, running, throwing, and jumping for millennia.
Yep.
And we need to continue to do that stuff.
Believe it or not, we're actually animals.
Right. We're animals, and like you see an animal out there, you see an ape or a gorilla or, a monkey or just any cat, any big cat, any small cat, even your dog, even my dogs, the way that they can move.
Yep.
And it's like, dang, that's how I want to be able to move like that intuitively. Something's coming, you can lift your hips up, because to get on the couch, like it's amazing.
Well, it's one of those things too, where if you don't use it, you lose it. Entirely. Yeah. I remember way back when, when I was training people, and to try and get like a 55-year-old person to jump, they had no confidence that they could remotely do it.
Right. Couldn't even jump.
Just the thought of jumping from, the floor to a step that was maybe 6 inches high, which is not high
Right.
remotely, just messed with them mentally.
Yep. Didn't think they could do it. Weren't confident, even though they, probably fully could do it. They were capable of it, and they just need to move their body and teach their body, hey, you can do this. It's
You can do this. You did this when you were 6 years old. You can still do it when you're 55.
Right. That's one thing I see. So I see my son, and he's like, he's only 5 months right now, and the way that his body's starting to form, and like all he does is he's focusing on his hips, and that's where you need your hips. The hips is the center of everything. It's like if somebody has breaks a hip, and in the next year their mortality increases by like 50 to 60%. It's insane.
Wow, interesting.
Super interesting, because they have full body system shutdowns. Like it's bad. Breaking a hip is really bad. That's why old people, you don't want them to break a hip. Not because breaking a hip is necessarily that bad. It's because for some reason, which we don't necessarily know quite yet, it's the body goes down and shuts, gets into
it's
failure.
The whole pelvis area in general is tied to so many other aspects overall of your body and
So it makes
how it
sense, right?
operates. Yes, it does.
That's what I said. I'm not here to explain that. I'm sure a physio person could come on here and help us, explain that. And I think, but it's like the hips are it's just so important. I see him, the way that he's starting to form everything. And it's wow, that's where the strength comes from. That's where it begins. And so getting people to like realize that, if you put a 55-year-old person on their back, they might not even be able to bring their legs up, like that.
They might
not. Like a child that is so natural for a child to do, so natural for us to do, the child's pose, or happy baby. Happy baby is a yoga pose where you lay on your back and you take your legs and you hold your legs with your hands and you kind of rock back. And that's what happy babies do. And it's so easy for them to do that they're just having their legs back there and then they grab them. And so that's why we call the pose. That's why they call the pose that. And it's like so natural for this baby to do this. And then you become a human being and stress and all this tension and you can't move.
Can't even tie your shoe.
Can't even tie your shoe. Yeah. And the thing that I was one of these people, I had no idea that that not movement, I was a good athlete, high school athlete, was going to play college sports, but decided to go into pharmacy instead. Still stayed relatively active in college, through intramurals and lifting and just working out and stuff. But then after school, depression, anxiety, and all this stuff, and my body, I just stopped moving, once I started moving again, I didn't realize, you don't realize how sick you are either. You don't realize how bad it is when you're in it because our brains are so programmed to survive. So they can just survive, no matter how
Between
hard.
Your brain and your body is going to adapt to your body's goal is survival at the end of the day. It'll adapt in any way possible in order to get you to continue living. Like we are highly adaptable human beings.
Right.
And to think that your body is ever working against you is false. Like it's never working against you. It always wants you to continue to live. It always wants you to be optimal. It's never trying to harm you whatsoever. So if you're experiencing things that are the expression of, essentially negativity in some aspect, it's your body trying to tell you that something is off and you need to work to try and fix it.
Right. And yeah, exactly. I think that's what it is. It's your body. That's the communication, is your body trying to say, hey guys, we gotta get to work here and we gotta start fixing it. And like slow movement, even just starting to go for a walk, once a day.
You have fresh air at that point in time.
Right. Fresh air, light.
Yep.
Light is so important for your circadian rhythm to, to expose yourself to light early in the day. Such a beneficial thing. Says, so many people are taking take 10, 20 milligrams of melatonin, every single night. It's like, this is a hormone that we naturally produce that we should be able to, and sometimes I've taken melatonin for sure,
Definitely. I think all of us have been implicated in some way by this more industrialized society and have had to, take a minute and be like, wait, I need to change X, Y, and Z in order to get back to a more closer, natural, healthy state or way of living. I think that happens to anybody throughout life. I feel like that happened, when we were starting our business, it was basically all me just focusing on the business, and health stuff definitely. It took a back seat. Like, I've got to make money and pay for things and get things up and running. And the only way to do that is to work. So the other stuff it's not a primary focus anymore.
Right.
And then eventually you'll hopefully get to a point where you're like, wait a minute, I can't really keep pushing this off. And then you realize that you work optimally in your business and flow space when you also still continue to focus on your physical and mental health.
I know it's so crazy we get away from it, right? Because it's like when you're in the good space and you're going to the gym and everything's healthy, and then one day you can just think, oh, I need to be doing this more and not go to the gym, and then you can mess everything up for yourself.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I think that once the more you get those habits, because now I can mess myself up, I can self-sabotage for a few days, but then by day 4, I'm back. I'm saying, okay, I need to get to the fucking gym today, dude, because I know that if I don't, then it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. I'm going to keep feeling worse and worse. I need to get here.
Then you can't present your best self at the end of the day. I mean, at that point in time, that you are personally failing yourself by not doing X, Y, and Z. So you're not going to be confident with yourself, which then is going to transition and transcend into everything else you do. Knowing like the subconscious wearing on you, even though you don't think it's as much in the forefront, it's evident in everything else that you do.
Yeah, you're right. And if you can give yourself that confidence, it's just going to give you that little extra giddy up to keep getting better and better and keep growing, become as optimized as possible.
Yep. I mean, every day, obviously you're trying to be better than you were your last day. Some days are easier than others. Some days are a win. Some days are a loss. And just move on. All you can do is try and get better.
That's it. That's the thing is, I have a buddy who's, he always says, this guy's, Uncle Al. You guys, listeners will know him. He'll come on the show sometimes. He always, he's an intellectual disability, and this guy's been through fucking everything. And he always says, tomorrow's another day. And that's a giddy up. Tomorrow's another day. Hey, if you didn't go for the walk today, if you didn't get to the gym today, if you didn't get to, feel good about yourself today, tomorrow's another day. And just, giddy up, make it happen. Today is a day. Do it today if you can.
Right.
But tomorrow's another day.
But yeah, don't let tomorrow come and not do it either.
Oh, for sure. Right. Exactly. If you can giddy it up. And that's the thing is, like you said, that's what we want is we want to encourage people here. We want a movement. And it's such a scary thing. Like when I first started getting into health, and it was yoga for me that got me back into it. And then it's since that has, just taught me so much more about all these other different modalities that I currently use to be my healthiest. But I was so scared. And like, my fiance told me to go to yoga for 5 years, and I didn't go. I wouldn't go, and she knew this was going to be so helpful for me. It's a thing that I love so much, that I talk about all the time, that I preach to everybody. And I didn't go for 5 years. I could have been doing this stuff for 5 more, I could be 5 more years into this then, but I didn't do it just because I did. And once I took that step, it was hard. Sure, there was some, I was maybe embarrassed, or it wasn't even that, but like whatever it was, I got there, and then I just kept showing up, and it felt good, and it felt good. And then if you can just let that spitball, it's a giddy up.
No matter what, we always revert to whatever our habits are. So like if we can make our habits really, really great, then, we're setting ourselves up for success in life. But if your habits are shitty, it's going to show in everything else that you do. Right.
And now let me ask you about a habit with your consumption of cannabis. What do you, I know some people who we have on the show are smoking all day when they're at their grow, and some people, consume, after work, and some people, can all different means. So I'm just curious of your thoughts on that.
I personally am best if I wait till after work. So I'm an after work heavy bong smoker. Is probably how I could describe myself best, or how I think my husband would describe myself.
Okay, and that helps you kind of relax and just get into the more relaxed state and chill out. And
yeah, my mind races as far as my mind's going, always thinking of various things to do, and just with the business as far as, a lot of ideas. And in order to get my mind to kind of calm down, prepare myself for sleep and relaxation time, cannabis comes into play. So definitely a lot of flower. And then people, it's funny because way back when we first started, people only obviously knew us as like making edibles. And everyone was like, so you guys actually, smoke weed? You don't just eat edibles?
That's so funny.
I'm like, we definitely consume way more flower than we eat edibles. But I probably have an edible a night too as well. I find that it helps a lot with just sleep consistency and depth of sleep and quality.
Definitely depth and quality of sleep for me, for sure. And I'm the same way. I consume, maybe on some shows I could come on and smoke
Right.
and talk with some people, but it would definitely be different. For me, it wouldn't be this,
Yep.
which is cool. Like, I think some people you can't tell if they've smoked, and that's cool. And then some people you can definitely tell. And
Everyone's, brain and endocannabinoid system's completely different.
right.
So everyone kind of has to just do whatever works best for them, and to think that there's a one size fits all solution for anything is naive.
Yeah. Now let's ask what about your mom's endocannabinoid system? How has her how her journey, has she changed? Her opinion changed about it at all, or does she still think it's the lazy people?
Oh, it's been very interesting just in general. I feel like to enlighten both of our parents. His parents are definitely a little bit more open to it per se than my mom in particular. But over the years, her position on cannabis has changed drastically. She's obviously very, very proud of us and kind of, what we've done and transcended over the years. But she has, tried some edibles, which I think are a great thing just for people who are more apprehensive about cannabis, just to start with. If it's done appropriately, what kind of dose you're getting, so you can kind of easier for them to navigate the experience that they're going to have. I definitely advocate for people on that end to do more of like what would be, I guess, considered more of a micro dose.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you don't want people to wig out on it. You want people to have a great time with it and to see the benefits of it for what it is. Because if they do wig out on it, they're never going to have it again.
Right.
And then there's just going to be a negative connotation associated with it permanently, which is not what we're trying to do.
Yeah, they can't see the benefits at all. Just
exactly.
Horrible.
But yeah, the funny story of that was one time when she went up snowmobiling up in northern New Hampshire. I gave her a pack of bonbons to take with her. And, whatever happens up in Colebrook stays up there type of thing.
Love it.
And so they went snowmobiling for a while, and their hands were really bothering them afterwards because, it's a bunch of people that are probably like 60 plus. And
yeah, ripping snowmobiles all day.
Exactly. So the arthritis in the knuckles and the hands was real bad. So they, split up their chocolate and each had probably a tiny amount. And a certain amount of time later, they were looking at each other and they're like, my hands don't bother me anymore. Do you think cannabis has anything to do with it, or is it just a coincidence?
It's funny how they learn, isn't it?
It really is. And I'm like, no, that was the cannabis.
Right. It can help with pain. It can help with inflammation. It can help with all types of things.
Exactly.
I love to hear it. I loved having you on the show today. I thought that it was so brilliant and awesome. I think that your brand is like so incredibly amazing. And now that I've actually gotten to hear like the backstory of it that I'd kind of, I'd heard about, but
right.
to actually hear it from you is like, I think I cried today. I almost cried a few other times. Like that's powerful stuff. And like, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and helping the community that we're trying to help, showing them that it's possible to get there through different means, and just about supporting people through, being themselves and, through their best optimal health experience. Like I thought it was so awesome to be with you today.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, giddy up. Well, guys, thanks so much from Janelle LaPlante from Tastefully Baked. Make sure you guys get over to check out her her Instagram page, and check out the all the stores that they're up in Maine Medical, and come over and check us out at Dr. BeeWell. We're gonna just keep helping everybody continue to try to do that. So it's a giddy up, y'all. We'll see you later. Bye bye.